Hello and welcome to another Middling Mondays. Today we're rocking Fathom playing as the Mech Boy on Ashes of Typhon, and his opponent is going to be Red Crown playing as the Chaos Lord. I feel like I'm following Red Crown around everywhere, but to be honest, he kind of is everywhere in the intermediate scene at the moment for 1v1s. So here he is once again. Now I've heard that this is a pretty crazy match, and we see some rather unique units, so I wanted to cast it and see what happens. Just a little disclaimer before we go any further. I know some of you have noticed, but not everyone may have done. I've actually set up a Buy Me a Coffee account. Buy Me a Coffee is essentially like Patreon, but instead of being a monthly subscription where you then get access to locked content, because, you know, if you're going to offer a Patreon, you should at least offer the patron some locked content, right? I can't really do that yet. So Buy Me a Coffee is more like a one-off donation sort of thing. So if any of you do feel you enjoy the content to the extent that you want to donate and really show your appreciation for it and how much you want this to continue, then using Buy Me a Coffee is quite good. If I recall correctly, Buy Me a Coffee takes a 5% cut of whatever you pay. So the minimum amount that they recommend, I believe, is the generic coffee value. It's $5 and they take 5% of that, which I think is pretty reasonable for the service they offer. It obviously makes it reliable. You know that where the money's going. It's not like some dodgy website or something. Anyway, that's an option that's there for in the meantime until I get big enough where I actually start a Patreon, and then I'll have locked content behind that and more uploads. Right now all I can afford to do is 2 at a time per week, so we'll keep rocking on that, and if enough people buy a coffee, I'll know that it's worth it, and I'll try and get that Patreon and extra content set up sooner. Regardless, here we go. Chaos Lord is already tangoing with double sluggers. He's handling the first one relatively well, but he has used his kill of the week, so he has to get out of there now. He can't actually finish off the second one, but that's fine for him. Because he was the only dude who was fighting those sluggers, he's got all the XP for the 3 boys that he's killed. And you can see that takes him nearly 3/4 of the way up to level 2, which is awesome to start with. If he does get a lot of levels early on, you could double down on that by going for the Dark Halo, because remember that the Dark Halo uses energy, right? But you get energy when you level up as well as HP, so that plus 10 energy is like an extra 50 HP from your Dark Halo. That was a really nice flank from the AC Ticks there. Ticks having the Aspiring Champion means that they will handily beat the Slugger Boys, even with the overwatching fire of the Mech Boy. Ended up snagging an extra 3 Slugger Boy models from Fathom. Watching Fathom, I've noticed he really loves going for melee spam, doesn't he? Now, while I was doing my little Buy Me a Coffee fucking shill, I didn't actually pay attention to what Fathom went for. Did he get a shoot and has already lost it, or did he just go straight for Storms? I'm assuming he only went double sluggers, because this is a very fast Storm Boy plus looter. Like, really quick. Crown's only just getting his Noise Marines out after Storm Boys plus Looter has already hit the field, so I assumed there was only 2 sluggers. But shit, you guys watching will know anyway. This is a weird build from Fathom. And yeah, I do assume it's 2 sluggers because he's conceded so much early map control. Look at the map, it's completely red. Massively favours Crown at the moment. Hopefully the advent of these Looters and the Storm Boys should change that. I would kind of expect to see the Looters just chilling down here, protecting the natural VP using their infiltration. That could be quite nice. It'll be annoying otherwise to deal with Aspiring Champion Heretics that come down here, because one Slugger Boy, even upgraded, will lose to that, so then you have to dedicate 2 of your units just to deal with a lone AC Tick. Not ideal. It would not be surprising to see the Combi Bolter on the Chaos Lord as well. Very good upgrade against the Orcs. Orcs don't really field a lot of heavy infantry. I mean, it's only Flash Gits and Knobs in tier 3 that are heavy infantry, so getting the combi bolt is great. All that piercing damage in tier 1, you can kill a damn lot of boys with that. Nice little special from the Storm Boys so far, utilising their power melee to do good damage to these Noise Marines. Finally stopped by the AC Ticks. Beautiful cacophony actually, knocking them back constantly into the Ticks. They do jump through, and they actually... Oh, that was a battery pack heal as well. Oh, very lucky special from the Chaos Lord there. But the Stormboy's got a decent special as well, knocking over the 2 Noise Marines. I can't believe these Noise Marines haven't lost a model yet. Here comes some Sluggers to reinforce, but also another squad of Aspiring Champion Heretics. The Stormboys are in a tough spot, but so are these Ticks. Ticks need to get out of there. The Noise Marines do stay on the field. They're actually 3 out of 3 models as well, which is kind of nuts. But the Mech Boy's going to go in and disrupt them. The AC Ticks have to flank around and go for the Looters. Looks like Kill the Weak has already come down to the kill slots and he needs to get out of there. He's actually in a pretty awkward spot here. These Sluggers are buffed up by double War. Okay, so they actually stop chasing and they're going to go for the AC Ticks as well. I don't really like that play. I think they would have been better off just hunting down the Space Marines. Because they're not going to be able to wipe them, and the Space Marines are just bleeding loads of unnecessary Slugger Boy Ticks. Slugger Boy Ticks? Slugger Boy models here. Heretics do make it out. They lose all their Heretic models, but the unit is alive thanks to that Aspiring Champion. Really does make the squad into a really shit, cheap, just capping unit into a really solid fighting unit for tier 1. And it does put a lot of pressure onto your opponents when you play Chaos and you get these double Aspiring Champion Ticks, because for their cost, they're really damn strong. Ticks themselves are the cheapest unit that you can get in the game, and the actual Aspiring Champion upgrade isn't that expensive either. So cost to cost, compared to things like Slugger Boys, Ticks are way better. The problem, of course, is that Ticks can't scale. This is as good as Ticks get in melee for the rest of the game. Come to tier 2, these guys are just not very good. Whereas Slugger Boys, I think you all know how Slugger Boys perform in tier 2. They are bad boys, very hard to kill. So Crown needs to really take advantage of the fact that he has the power here in tier 1 with these AC Ticks, and he needs to get the Gem Bash off, which is obviously what he's trying to do. He was trying desperately there. He kept the Noise Marines in play for a long time, but he didn't manage to get it, and that hurts him. He is actually ahead in tech, which is quite impressive because he's gone for a fairly expensive tier 1. Doesn't have an Eternal War, but he did upgrade both Ticks, and he's gone for the Noise Marines. I guess Fathom's gone for a really expensive tier 1 as well. Did drop his gens down sooner because obviously he only went for that opening 2 squads. But he has gone for double upgrades on the Sluggers, Stormboys and Looters, and also the Battery Pack, so yeah, very expensive on power. Stormboy is actually performing really admirably here. Actually soloing the Ticks pretty easily. I kind of wasn't paying attention there as to whether or not they got a special attack. Generally, the ability of the Stormboys to get a special attack on the Aspiring Champion model, since he only has 70 melee skill, is what will determine those fights. Looks like a beautiful cacophony here from the Noise Marines, but it's not beautiful enough because they're going to get wiped. They do. Oh, but the Chaos Lord has actually got into melee with the Looters and wipes him. AC Ticks might go down. Nope, looks like they're just going to be surviving. These Slugger Boys need to be careful about retreat path. A sweeping doom could be quite painful, but instead the Chaos Lord is just going to get a sync kill on a single boy for some reason. Don't know how that happened. That's not meant to happen anymore. You're only meant to get sync kills on the final model in a unit. For that exact reason, it really just screwed him over there. Oh well. He's got that Blood Maul, and he's level 3, and he's looking pretty fucking scary right now, I'm not gonna lie. Now the Blood Crusher's out, it's putting in some work, he's gonna bash that power node. Not really anything better for it to do, it's not gonna be able to keep up with the Mech Boy teleporting around. However, it is going to be meeting a Death Dread soon. The Death Dread does get melee resistance, whereas the Blood Crusher doesn't. So the Blood Crusher will lose quite handily to that Death Dread. However, the Death Dread has to be repaired, whereas obviously you can heal the Blood Crusher from a distance using your Heretics Worship. So you can slowly will him down with the Blood Crusher and then whiz out of there with your charge ability, plus the Corn speed boost and heal up with your Worship, and then come back to attack the Death Dread. However, the Death Dread normally doesn't have a lot of repair support when you see him used by most Orc players. So say there's a Commando Nob, say there's a War Boss, they obviously can't heal the Death Dread, unlike the Mech Boy. And typically you see double shooters and one slugger, so there'd only be one repair unit, and you'd always want your slugger to be fighting, because sluggers, as I said before, are a great unit in tier 2. So it means there isn't a lot of repair support, but this time, double sluggers and Mech Boy, that's actually a lot of repair support. So this Death Dread, long story short, it could put in a whole lot of work here, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, do we see the knobs yet? We don't even see the knobs yet, but the Slugger Boys are still just putting in so much work, so much damage from them. Triple WoW was used there, so that buffs the speed and the damage of all these Orcs, exponentially based on how many WoWs you use. Both of these ticks, as mentioned before, they're going to bleed massively. Now, the 2 ranged AV units are coming out. You've got the Tank Busters to counter the Blood Crushers, you've got the Plague Marine to counter the Death Dread. The combination of the Plague Marine plus the Blood Crusher will threaten the Death Dread quite a lot, but obviously there's a lot of melee here. The melee can tie up the Plague Marines quite easily, and right now, Fathom's army is just way better. Once he gets the knobs and the sluggers, his army should just be able to aim move through crowns, because these AC ticks, they don't do shit against a melee tier 2 orc squad. These marines, like, I feel like they need to be turned into corn marines if they're going to want to be effective, because they're just going to get tied up in melee, and unless you get some other form of control. I mean, you could keep them near the Plague Marines. Plague Marines have that passive AoE slow around them, so any enemy units that try to move near the Plague Marines, they get automatically slowed, and it also removes their ability to do a melee charge. So that's quite cool if you're trying to kite with your Chaos Marines. He obviously has the other option of keeping them near the Chaos Lord. He's got that Sweeping Doom, he's got that Kill the Weak, that will disrupt all the melee, keep his CSM safe to shoot up the opponents. But I don't know how much value you get from their bolters. CSM are not really a high damage unit. They only really get high damage when you get the Zinch Marines, and then they're only really good against heavy infantry, because they're not really high damage, period. They're just decent damage that ignores heavy infantry armor. But sluggers, they just have a lot of HP, and the armor isn't really a factor in that. It's just a lot of raw HP. Anyway, Fathom doesn't like the look of this engagement. I suppose he is rather caught out of position with the Chaos Lord there and no sort of ranged troops, so he has to back out of this. Losing the looters really sucks because he doesn't really have a counter to the Chaos Lord now. I'd like to see some more investment into the Chaos Lord, maybe get an Icon of Khorne or the Demonic Visage, just to make him even tankier. And he's just going to be a real cunt to force off. You can even go the Harness of Rage and the Dark Halo since he's level 3. He's got a lot of energy here. Now, as you can see, the Blood Crusher gets absolutely spanked by the Death Dread by default. However, the Plague Marines are here to support, so the Death Dread is trying to back up. Now, he's backing up into Tank Busters, which actually will kill this Blood Crusher really, really quickly. Blood Crusher does not have a lot of HP. He needs to get out of there. CSM are actually facing the correct position here, so all 4 of them are shooting down this poor Mech Boy. Mech Boy is getting absolutely wrecked. For some reason the CSM are running away, I don't really know why. They should just finish him off. Now, on the backlines, it looks like the Heretics have got into a fight with Stormboys. Not really a fight that they want to take. Stormboys are nearly level 4. Oh my god. Heretics are only level 1. Looks like the Heretic play really isn't paying off. They're just getting absolutely battered by the Orc melee, and he didn't actually get his Gem Bash as I'd hoped, and I imagine he hoped in tier 1 as well. Beautiful charge from the Blood Crusher here. Stormboys overstaying their welcome, trying to get the wipe on the Chaos Heretics, no doubt. The Heretics get out with roughly 10 HP, and the Stormboys actually managed to get out without losing their knob, no doubt, helped by the fact that they are level 4. They're going to have way more HP than a default Stormboy squad would do. Even the damage over time from the Plague Bolters of the Plague Marines isn't going to be enough to put those Stormboys into the ground. Now, as you can see, Slugger Boys are trying to get onto these Plague Marines, but they don't get their melee charge because the Plague Marines prevent melee charge, which is cool. Blood Crush is going to move in, try and force off these Slugger Boys. Don't really do a huge amount of damage, to be honest, but the combination of the BC plus the CL will actually do some good damage. A nice fat amount of that damage has actually gone onto the Slugger Knob there, so he'll probably come out of base with full models but not full HP. So it could be that he will end up losing the Slugger Knob in the next fight, depending on how things go. Looks like he wants to keep the CSM with the bolters so that he can hunt down the Mech Boy. I think that's actually a decent idea. Obviously, trying to kill the Mech Boy in melee is a bit awkward because he can teleport away, so it's annoying. At least when he's got the CSM with the bolters, they can just do that and shoot him down, deal with him that way. That said, you've got to remember the Con Marines do have decent ranged weapons, and of course, they do get a speed buff when you get that upgrade, so definitely still quite strong. Chaos Lord needs to be careful there. I'm not sure if he's got Kill the Weak available, but he's in a lot of trouble. Slugger Boys really should just been focusing on the Chaos Lord. I don't know, maybe he had Kill the Weak still. He's lost energy. I don't think I've seen the Sweeping Doom, so I assume he does still have Kill the Weak. Good use of Blood Sacrifice as well, and the Worship to heal up the Blood Crushers and these Bloodletters, preserve them. Note that if you summon your Bloodletters with the Blood Sacrifice, they dissipate when their energy runs out, and their energy goes down naturally over time. But you can give them energy regen with your Worship, and that will basically keep them around forever whilst they're getting worshipped. Stormbows are going to get into melee with the CSM here. If they do have Slaughter available, they will be able to take this fight, but it doesn't look like they are, and they're really low on melee skill, which just means the Stormbows are knocking them over constantly. However, this does put the Stormbows in a bit of a dubious position here with the Blood Crusher running in from the side. Yeah, they're going to jump out. That's wise, because if they charged through them there, that could have done a lot of damage, potentially even killing the Knob, which is very expensive to replace. Now, we see that both players have actually managed to take the time to tech to tier 3, and both players are actually opting for the same thing, a tank. The Chaos Predator is opting for the Mark of Khorne. That'll buff its speed by a little bit, buffs its heavy bolters by 75%, and its autocannon by 25%. That's actually a really nice upgrade in this instance. You want to be fast because there's so much melee on the field, and even the power melee from the Slugger Boys will do decent damage to a tank. Death Dread as well, I think... Yeah, it would have been really risky to go for the Nurgle Predator just because there's so much melee on the field. And yes, you get the regen, yes, you get melee resist with a Nurgle Predator, but they're obviously really slow, so it just makes you will just lose a lot of damage from melee attacks, whereas the Khorne Predator should be able to just kite the melee infinitely. Now, the Khorne Predator is a lot more vulnerable to the actual cannon of the looted tank, but on the other hand, it can do a lot more damage to the looted tank. It also is going to be able to kill the boys a lot quicker with its bolters than a Nurgle Predator would. Well, it's probably about the same, because you do get damage over time with the Nurgle Predator bolters as well. So we'll just have to see how the tank battle turns out. Both these tanks, well, actually, I was going to say both of them have 700 HP, but not anymore. The looted tank has got an extra 200 from the reinforced plating. Oh, it looks like Fathom is completely forgetting about Stormbows. Not quite completely, he's actually backing them out on a jump. That was a little bit late. That's going to be really costly to reinforce all of that. Ooh, Tank takes an awkward position there. I don't know what that was all about. Looked like it was moving in for the flank, but he sort of regretted it, chose not to, and then turned away and ended up getting a rear armor shot onto his tank. Not ideal, but it doesn't really matter because there's no follow-up here. Both players are just going to chill at the center of the map with the VP uncontested and await their next move. I'm not sure what Crown's saving up for. Could be waiting for Terminators, but he's not going to be able to get them out anytime soon due to the lack of red. At this point, he could get another Predator. Looks like he's not opting for that. What's his pop looking like? 87 pop. That's a lot of pop. I think a Predator is 12. It's either 12 or 15. If it is 15, then that explains why he's not buying anything. Probably at this point wants to just sack off a few of these heretic models. Don't really need them to be full health. They've not really done anything in combat for ages anyway. They're just there for repairs and capping and worship at this point. Maybe he's suiciding this squad. No, it doesn't look like he's suiciding it. It does back it off, but literally all of Fathom's army at this point is down at the bottom half of the map, and I guess his game plan is just camp down here. He is behind on VPs, so I don't really know how I feel about that. Wow, look at that autocannon shot from the Corporate. That did fucking loads there. Jeez, and then that second one did barely any. Weird. A lot of dead Slugger Boys. Yeah, that squad backs off. Tank Busters are, well, they're doing a lot of like posturing. They're shooting things all over the place, but nothing's really hitting anything. And a fat autocannon hit into a slap from the Blood Maul of the Chaos Lord. It's going to drop down that Tank Buster. Bolters from the Corporate really putting in work, but we see a flank coming in here. Double looted tanks trying to get onto the rear armor of the Predator, but the Predator does turn around. The looted tanks are too busy shooting at infantry, and the Blood Crusher rushes in to screen. Nice play from Crown there, not panicking. Screens really well with his units. I've not actually seen a Sweeping Doom. Are we going to see it at last? Sweeping Doom these cunts, knock them flying. Come on, Sweeping Doom, man, boy. What's going up top? Plague Marines were up top. Yeah, they really need to be down bottom to deal with these tanks. Cult of Speed is actually activated. Looks like he's going to suicide the Death Dread, charging it forward, but the looted tank... Oh my god, what's he doing? He pursues with the looted tanks really far, but leaves the Pred alive with like 10 HP. One more shot would have killed it. There's not even any AV on the field. Okay, the Plague Marines have retreated back to base. Big wow. They were in retreat still. He definitely could have killed that Predator. That was a big missed opportunity. But both of the melee vehicles on either side have now been killed. I mean, it's not really a big deal. Once tanks come out in the field, melee vehicles aren't really that relevant. They're best used to, like, protect a VP on the side of the map where the actual tanks aren't. So if you've got, like, most of the action fighting up here, you'd place your Blood Crusher down here to protect the VP from side-capping heroes. Anyway, the Predator is going to stay alive. It's level 1. Some of the looted tanks, but we actually see a Land Raider Phobos coming out for Red Crown. That's a beautiful choice. Land Raider Phobos, super unit for Chaos. They do have access to the Great and Clean One as well. Great and Clean One is more of like an anti-melee tank, whereas the Land Raider Phobos is definitely anti-vehicle. Its twin-linked las cannons that it has do crazy damage to vehicles. This little tank might go down here. We see Bloodlust buffing up the damage of all the nearby Chaos troops, and it's already been hit by a Plague Marine missile, snaring it so it can't get away. Combination of the Chaos Pred and the Plague Marines will take out that Predator. Now this Predator is moving a bit too far forward, can't really kill all of these things with its low amount of HP. Oh, it's exposing rear armor, but unfortunately the tank shots are hitting terrain. Now the tank is pursuing, but there's already Plague Marines here, so I don't know if it wants to do that. There's going to be another missile hit soon. Oh, this is a really, really scrappy engagement. One more shot from the Plague Marines. Should be able to finish this tank off. No, it won't actually. It misses anyhow. Okay, well the looted tank's going to survive, but the problem is there's now a Land Raider Phobos coming out of the field. Because all this time, Crown's not really been bleeding. He's lost a few heretics, some of which he hasn't even reinforced, but CSM have never been bleeding. Plague Marine's not really been bleeding. Whereas Fathom, on the other hand, has been bleeding shitloads. Boys have been dropping left, right, and centre. And that is not good. It means that he doesn't actually have anything to replace his lost looted tank with, and there's now a super unit on the field, which really the best counter to this is knobs. You want to get knobs, and you want to get the super tough beam with the mech boy to give them damage resistance. That will just shit on this Land Raider Phobos. Yes, it can stun you for a few seconds with its ability, but it is literally just a few seconds, and then it's a Civian Duck to the knobs who will chase it down and beat it up. Right now though, there's no knobs, there's not really anything. He's actually quite far off in requisition before he can get the knobs, and obviously that's default knobs without any upgrades. Then you got to pay for the frenzy, you got to pay for the hammers, which are really helpful. You got to pay for the extra HP on the knob. So yeah, this is not looking good for Fathom at the moment. He's going to get another looted tank. I think that's a really bad idea. I think he's only just seen the Phobos now, so he definitely needs to be cancelling the tank and going for a looted Predator instead. Watch the Phobos just annihilate this looted tank. The melee does get there, but unfortunately these Slugger Boys are only light melee. Now, nothing's killing the tank busters, so they can get some good DPS onto the Phobos, but I don't know what he's doing here. He's just... yeah, just a lot of bleed from the boys. This is just too much DPS from these vehicles right now. Yeah, the tank is really doing really well. I don't know what he's referring to. Is he saying the tank, as in the Phobos, shouldn't exist? The Phobos isn't really a tank. It's a super heavy, well, it's a super heavy vehicle. It's like a transport carrier. It's more like a weapons platform, because it doesn't reinforce or heal like the other Land Raiders. Well, Land Raider Redeemer heals. It does help you win all ranged engagements. That's the whole point of a weapons platform. But you've got to nuke it, and you've got to throw a melee at it. It's really vulnerable to melee. But it looks like Fathom can't really counter it. I mean, he's gone for double looted tanks. I don't really know why. Looted tanks are just going to get obliterated by the Phobos. Look at that! Default Predator just loses half of its HP with a single hit from both the twin-link blast cannons of the Phobos. I mean, Fathom's complaining about it. I don't really know why, because that's just what the Land Raider Phobos does. It's an AV super unit. It's really slow. It can't retreat, obviously, like all vehicles, but you know, compared to like a tank, it's super slow. It's really vulnerable to melee for that reason. It's really big in its profile, so you just drop nukes on this thing, and it's going to drop really easily. But compositionally here, Fathom just fell apart in the end. A bit of a shame, really. I think if he took out that Predator, he'd have been in a really good spot, because the Predator was inflicting so much bleed on him, and big up to Red Crown for his use of the Predator. I really liked it down here in this engagement, when he sort of turned it around, didn't let the flanking tanks scare him. He actually screened with his infantry, so the tanks were moving, so a moving tank always will shoot the thing that's nearest to it. So it shot the infantry first, wasted its shots, and couldn't hurt the Predators. Then the Blood Crusher moved in, and it backed them off, and then the Death Dread moved in, and it couldn't catch up to the tank. So this Khorne tank did really fucking well. And honestly, a lot of times people say that Nurgle tanks are the best thing to get against Orcs. I do think Nurgle tanks are really good against Orcs, but mostly if they're stuck in tier 2 spamming infantry. When you're up against tanks, on the enemy side. Also, if you're up against a mech boy, I don't think the Nurgle tank is half as good. The mech boy obviously can get his BME Death Gun, can really punish you at long range. Having the extra speed from the Khorne tank is really nice, and you still do really good damage to infantry because you get 75% extra damage on your heavy bolters with this thing, which roughly is about the same then as the damage over time that you get from the Nurgle tank. It does require more micro because obviously it doesn't heal itself, but as we can see in this game, for Middling Mondays, it's very good when you micro it well. And the Land Raider Phobos, genius decision, absolutely annihilated those pathetic Orc looted tanks. Knobs, I think, would have been the best option for Fathom there, but even then, he was running out of VPs, he didn't really have the time. The Knobs would have came out instead of the second tank, but the Knobs would have had no upgrades, so it would have been difficult. That said, imagine if the Predator was already dead. He'd have had more requisition, he'd have got the Knobs out earlier, maybe he had some meaner and greener hammer Knobs then in that final engagement, could definitely have pushed off that Land Raider Phobos and got onto his VP. So there we have it. That is another match for Middling Mondays. Thank you for watching, folks. Torpid out.